Hello and welcome to section 6 of my Linux commands course. So in this section we're going to look at the file and directory commands. So this is all about creating files, creating directories, deleting files, and all of them useful things. So this is one of the most useful sections for improving workflow. So the first command you are familiar with, which is ls, which lists all of the directories, and when I refer to directories I mean folders, and also files within the directory you're currently in. So I'm in the root directory, and the way you can find out what directory you're currently in is another command called pwd. If you type pwd and click enter, it shows you where you currently are in the system. Now for you on a Ubuntu system, you might not be in the root directory. You might be on your desktop. So if I go to my desktop just to make it more sense, I'm on the desktop now, which is here basically. And if I type ls, I can list all of the files and directories in my desktop or on my desktop. So like on a Windows desktop, you have different files and folders. This is the same thing but through the terminal. And if I type pwd again, as you can see it says root and desktop. But the very first command is ls and then -la. So this is very similar to ls. Well, it is ls, except it's got an option which displays more information. So I click enter. So wherever you are in your system right now and you type ls-la, you'll see all of the folders and files that are currently in that directory. But this time you will also see the date they were created and the owner, the group associated to the folder, which is basically aligned like this. So the corresponding group and corresponding owner for this directory and so on. So it goes down like so. So let's just use this new website folder for example. Here it says D. So these are the permissions. Now D just means it's a directory, and when I say directory I mean a folder, because a directory can have different folders in it, many different folders, and they can have folders in, you can have files in them, so it's a directory. This bit here goes in threes, and if you can't remember from a previous video, these are the file permissions. So the way it works is you have an owner of the file, you have a group associated to the specific file or folder. In this case it's a directory, so it's a folder. And you'll also have others. Now because I only have one account on this system, which is root, this means that basically I own the file, and here you can see I do, because it says read, write and execute for the owner. So it goes the owner, and here I have all of the permissions, which is read, write and execute. The next one here, if I just highlight it, I hope you can see that, but it goes in threes, so it goes rwx. This means the group can read and execute this directory but cannot write. Then it means here exactly the same for the others. Now others, if you can't remember, is basically anyone that doesn't own the folder and is not in the group associated to the file. So if I had another user called John and he was in a different group called new users or new employees, he is not associated to this directory because he's not in the group root. He's also not the root account, and he's not the root or the file owner, because root is. So hopefully that makes sense. And then he falls under others, which means he can only read and execute this directory. And the same goes for every other folder. So ls-la is very important to understand, or to see what, permissions certain files and folders currently have. The next command is making a directory. So you can make a directory through the terminal by typing mkdir. This essentially just makes a folder, like making a folder on a Windows 10 desktop. mkdir and then the name of the folder. You can also make multiple different directories at once. So I'll call this folder, and then I'll call the second one folder 2, and then I'll create a third one called folder 3. You just separate them out by a space. Now if you only wanted one directory, then you just leave it like so. So I'll make one first just to show you, and type ls, and as you can see it's made a directory. But then I can also make two more in one command by typing make dir folder 1. In fact I'll call this folder 2 and then folder 3. Click enter and I'll type ls, and as you can see it's created two more directories within one command. So it's very useful to know, and that will be very familiar later on as well with other commands. We've made a directory here. Now we're going to look at creating some files and editing some files. So I'm going to go inside of the folder, which is the original directory here. So folder, CD folder, if you type CD folder and go into it, so as you can see, I'm inside this current folder. If I type ls, it's not going to display anything because it's a new folder and there's no files in it or folders. Now I'm going to create a file, which is just a blank text file. All you can do, or all you need to do, is type touch file and then the name of it. So, well, this can be the name of it. In this case, I'm going to call it file1. You could call it absolutely anything, but just make sure there's a space. So when there's a space, then it's the file's name. You can make multiple different text files as well by typing the multiple different names like I did up here for folders. So I could call this file 2, and I will do that. So file 3 and file 4. In fact, no, I'll leave file 4 off, but just create file 1, 2, and 3. Click enter. If I type ls, as you can see, we've got 3 text documents now. But they don't have any contents inside of them. So there's ways of editing them through the terminal. The first one is by opening LeafPad or a certain text editor through the terminal. So if you type the application name, then the file name, so in this case file 1, if I click enter now, it will open the specific file in the LeafPad. Now LeafPad's just a text editing document on a Linux system. So if I just type this was edited with LeafPad, and I'll close that now. Now the next command is cat. So cat will view the contents of the specific file. So if you type cat and then file 1, because we're in the right directory to display this file because it's in the folder directory. If we were in the desktop and we typed cat file 1, it wouldn't work because we need to be in the folder because that's where it is. So I'll click enter, and as you can see, it displays the contents inside of file 1. This was edited with LeafPad. So I'm going to type clear now, and that will work for any sort of text document or text, type of text document which has text in it, so like a HTML file, for example. So cat command will view the contents. You can also view the contents by typing less and then the file name. In my case, it's file 1, so I'll click enter. Now this is to browse through the file, but I don't really like using this at all. Cat is so much easier, and it's sort of a bit stupid, this. I don't like it, but you can use less. To get out of this, you press Ctrl and Z, and there we go, so it's stopped. Now I don't like less. I don't really understand it, so I don't use it that much. You can use another one, which is head. If you type head and then the file name, you click enter, this will just display. It seems very similar to cat, but it only displays the first 10 lines of the file. So if I had multiple lines of this and had 15 lines of this, one after the other, it would only display 10 of them because it's the first 10 lines of that file from the top. To display the last 10 lines of the file, you can type tail, which is the bottom end, so head and tail of the document, and then the file name, so file 1. Let me just make sure that's correct. 1 second, let me just clear that so it moves it, so it's tail and then file 1. So that just displays the last 10 lines. Obviously it looks a bit strange because I don't have 10 lines in this document, but it's useful to know in case it's a massive log document and you need to display the last 10 logs from a month ago. So it's very useful to know that, because typically like them sort of files can have thousands of lines in them. So now let's have a look at removing files. But there's one more useful command, and I think it's my favorite command when creating files. So if I go back to the desktop now, in fact no, I will stay in the folder directory, and what I'll do is I'll create a file within this directory. So it's got file 1, 2, and 3. I'll create a file 4. So let's create file 4, and the way you can do this is by cat. Now I said before cat will display the contents of the file, and that's correct. But you can also use cat space and then a angle bracket or a greater than symbol, then space and then a new file name. So file 4, one that hasn't been created before. If I click enter, it doesn't really do anything, but we are editing this file directly through the terminal without LeafPad opening an application. We can edit the file here. So this is edited with the terminal. And then all you need to do is click enter and then press Ctrl C. Then if I type ls, we can see there's a file 4, the type cat file 4, click enter. This is edited with the terminal. So that's very useful. It's one of my favorite commands because it's so useful to, or it's very easy and quick, and it improves your workflow so much. So now let's have a look at removing files, and then we'll have a look at copying, and that will be this section completed. So we'll go back to the desktop, and the way you can go back one directory is by typing CD and then 2 full stops. Click enter, and that will go back one directory, because if you type CD on its own, so if I go back into this directory really quickly, if I type CD, it goes straight to the root directory. And if I show you now, I'm in the root again, but I didn't want that because it's okay for now because it's only one directory I need to go back into, which is the desktop. However, if you're on a system where it has multiple different directories and it's a long list, so you go in one folder, then another, and then another, and then another, and you type CD by accident, but you only wanted to go back one folder, it can be quite annoying, so it's useful to know. So now we've got folder 1, or folder 2, and folder 3. So I'm going to create some files because we're going to remove them. So I'll create a file. So touch new file. We'll create a new file 2 and new file 3. So now we should have different text files. There we go. So we've got our folders that we created, and we've got these new text files here. I didn't mean to do that, so I'll just close that. Sorry about that. So we've got our files, and now we're going to remove them. So simple, how to remove a file. You just type rm for remove, and then the file name. In this case, I'll remove file 3. I'll type clear just to get rid of all of that, and then I'll type ls, and as you can see, file 3 is gone. You can remove multiple different files by doing the same thing as before. So you just type, for example here, I could type new file and new file 2, change that. That would remove both of them files. I don't want to do that because I've just created them, but you get the idea. So always space out in between if you've got multiple files that you need to delete. You can delete a directory, but it's slightly different. So in this case, you can type rm and then the directory's name. So rm folder 3. And as you can see here, it says is a directory and it can't remove it. So you need to, the slight difference with this one is -r. Click enter, and now it's gone. And that's because it needs to remove it using a special option, which is recursively. So in case it has files within it, it needs to delete them as well. So if I type ls and go inside of the folder again and type ls, as you can see, we've got files. Now a typical directory could have folders as well within a folder, and the way you remove a directory is because it needs to remove all the contents within that folder recursively. So that's why you need to use the -r. So if I was to remove folder now, go back one directory and type rm without the -r for folder, as you can see, it won't work. But if I type the -r, it will remove all of these files here as well as this folder. So I'll just leave them documents up for now though. The next command is force removing something. So if rm file doesn't work, so let's just see what files we got here. So if rm new file 2, for example, didn't work, you can force delete a file, so -f. Just something else to know. So if you're trying to remove a file and it won't, try it with -f. This will just force remove a file without prompting confirmation. So be careful with -f though, because it can be quite powerful in the sense that there'll be no prompt, it'll just remove it from your system. Now let's have a look at copy. So I'm going to add some text into new file. This is text number 1. So this is going into new file, and then I'll edit new file 2, and I'll put this is text, I can't even spell, text number 2. I'll save that. And let's just check really quickly. So you type cat again. It's always important, or when learning, it's always important to keep repeating the commands. So this is text number 1 for new file, and cat new file 2 is text number 2. Now we're going to look at copy. So you can copy a file like on a normal Windows computer into a new text document with a new name, or you can copy the contents from one file into another that's already existing. So the contents of new file, we're going to copy into new file 2. It will override what is in new file 2, which is, this is text number 2. So you type CP for copy, then the name of the original file that you want to copy the contents into something else. So new file, we want to copy this text into this new document. So new file 2. Click enter, and nothing will happen, but if you type cat new file 2, click enter, as you can see now it says this is text number 1, but before it was text number 2. So it's basically just copy the contents, and whatever the contents are in this text file will appear in this one now. It will override what was originally in new file 2. If we remove new file 2, rm new file 2, so we've removed it, we're going to copy the contents of this file, which is this is text number 1, into a completely new text file. So the way you can do that is by CP again. So CP and then new file, and then we'll call this new file 3. So new file 3. Click enter. If I type ls, as you can see, new file 3 exists now, and if I type cat new file 3, click enter, this is text number 1. So literally just copied this text file into a new text file called new file 3. It's just an exact copy of this file here with a new name. If you get confused about all that, just think of Windows 10 or like a Windows computer where you copy a file on your desktop or a folder and you just rename it. So the same thing with directories, because we've only looked at copying files. So if I type ls and folder, we can copy folder. We'll copy folder and all of its contents inside. Remember, directories must be recursive. So the only difference here, again, very similar to remove, because if you remember, remove for a file was just rm, remove for a directory was rm-r. The same thing with copy, so it's cp for a normal file and -r for a directory. Then the source directory, which is folder, this is the directory we want to copy into a new directory. So folder, and then we'll copy this into new folder 3. Or folder 3, we'll just call it folder 3. Click enter, type ls, and remember, because inside the folder file, if I go inside of it again one last time and type ls, as you can see we've got file 1, 2, 3 and 4 that we created earlier. That is also going to copy into folder 3 because we called it folder 3. So if we go inside folder 3 and type ls, as you can see we've got the same files. Now these are basically just a copied folder, exactly like it would on Windows 10 or a Windows computer. You copy a folder, whatever's inside of that folder will also be copied, exactly the same as this. Now if I make changes to folder, just the normal folder for example, so I go back again and go into folder, then I remove file 1, ls, as you can see now it's only got file 2, 3 and 4. If I go into folder 3, as you can see that one still has file 1, and then we can copy file if we go, we can copy file 1 into this original folder. So you'd have to just type cp file 1 and then into a certain directory, so file 1, and what we'll do is we'll leave the copy for now because I'm going to show you one more command, which is to move a file. So when you copy a file, it can only be in the same directory. You can move a file though into an existing directory. So if I move, this won't create a copy, this will move a file. So if I take move mv file 1, and what we'll do is we'll move that to, let's move it to, so since we're in there we need to go out the directory and go into folder, click enter. So what we've done here is we basically moved this file out of folder 3, going back to the desktop, then into the new folder, or into the original folder, which is this one. So we've gone from this directory back to desktop into this new file, technically new, and then moved the file 1 into that directory. So if I type ls, as you can see file 1's gone now. and then if I go back and cd into folder and type ls, now file 1 is in folder. So it's gone from folder 3, which is here, back into folder. And as you can see, folder 3 doesn't have file 1 anymore. So now let's try and copy it again now. So I apologize about that before. I wanted to show you move first and then copy. So copy file 1 into folder 3. I think this will need a name though, so let's just see if this works. So copy without a name. Now you can add a name if you wanted to like rename it basically, but in this case I'm just copying the whole file into a different directory, because you can have different directories, you can have the same name files in them because they're not clashing, basically they're not together, so it won't make a copy. So let's go into folder 3, so cd folder 3 ls, and as you can see we've both got it back, so it's made a copy. So let's make a copy of file 4, we'll call this file 5, and let's see if this works. So folder, as you can see, file 5 no such directory, so let's try it this way with the file at the end. So file 5 is actual directory. So copying a file from one directory to another, you can only keep it as the same name. If you copy it across to a different or the same area, so if I copy it into file 5 in the same directory, which is all the same area, if I click enter, this will allow me to do it. Then you just move it across to the other directory. So if I type move again, so move file 5 into or back, so full stop / is basically go back a directory into the desktop, then into folder, and then move it there. So we'll go back, and there we go. So file 5 has, been copied from file 4 into this directory, then moved into folder 5 from folder 3. So I think that is essentially it. That is this section covered. Hopefully it wasn't too much. I don't want to make it too long. It is more than 20 minutes already. I recommend going practicing all of this stuff. It's really important. The last thing I'm just going to quickly show you is removing the file. So I'll go back into the desktop, type ls, go into the folder, so cd into folder, which has all of these files. Then you can just type rm, and remember, because it's just a file, well, these are just files, you don't need the -r, and then just type file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4, and file 5. All of them have gone, and my challenge to you basically is to remove all of these folders at the same time within one command from the desktop. I'll give you a few seconds to type it, shouldn't take too long, so I'll just wait. All I want you to do is remove folder 2 and folder 3. If you change the names or you haven't given them the same names, then just do the same thing, just delete them within one command. So essentially all it is, if you've not done it already, I'll give you a few more seconds. It's rm-r and then the directory's name, so folder 2 and folder 3. As you can see, it says it's no such file or directory, and the reason for that is I completely messed that up myself. I was in the folder directory trying to delete them. As you can see, it's on the desktop, so and in fact I was in the root directory trying to delete them. So make sure I go to the desktop again. Even I got that wrong, so that's a bit stupid. So make sure you're in the right directory for a start, and let's try it again. So rm-r folder 2. I didn't get the command wrong, I was just in the wrong directory, but there you go. It happens to the best of us. Remove that and type ls, and there we go. So that's the commands complete. Hopefully this section was informative, and it's going to improve your workflow within Linux machines. So I will see you all in the next section.